Hey everyone, and welcome to the show. Ever feel like you're surrounded by people, but still kind of starving for connection? Like you're missing out on those deep, soul-satisfying relationships that make life, feel truly meaningful. Well, this deep dive is for you. We're going to crack open the blueprint for belonging. And
Yeah.
yes, the inspiration comes straight from Jesus himself. This is definitely Christian living and self-help genres. So if that's your jam, buckle up. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss out on future deep dives.
Future deep dives. I like it.
Today we're exploring Blueprint for Belonging, the 5 relationships Jesus needed and why you need them too, by Alli Patterson. You can find the link to grab your own copy in the show notes. Get ready for some aha moments. Because what if the way Jesus lived is actually the key to unlocking the kind of belonging we all crave?
It's a fascinating premise, isn't it? Patterson doesn't shy away from the reality that loneliness is a universal struggle. What makes this book so compelling is that it doesn't stop at diagnosis. It offers a practical roadmap for actually doing something about it, using Jesus' life as a model.
Okay, so let's unpack this. I'm curious about this idea of using Jesus as a blueprint for relationships. What's the connection there?
Patterson argues that the way we approach relationships is directly tied to the health of our souls. She uses this Hebrew word nephesh, which goes beyond just soul as we typically think of it. It encompasses our entire being, mind, will, emotions, and body, all interwoven.
So it's not just that we have a soul, it's that we are a soul, and our relationships are part of that very essence.
Exactly. And because of this interconnectedness, the way we engage in relationships, the quality, the intentionality directly impacts our inner well-being. Think about it. A strained relationship can make you physically ill, right? Or a supportive friend can make you feel lighter and more energized.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like our relationships are feeding our souls, for better or for worse. But how does Jesus fit into all of this?
Patterson breaks down Jesus's relationships into 5 distinct categories, almost like a blueprint for building a fulfilling relational life. She starts with what she calls the core.
Okay, so who makes up this core group? Are we talking like best friends forever, soulmates, that kind of thing?
It's similar but with a spiritual depth to it. Your core are your ride or die people, those 1 to 3 individuals you can be completely yourself with. Think of Jesus's inner circle, Peter, James, and John. They witnessed his miracles, his struggles, his most vulnerable moments. This level of trust is profound.
So it's about more than just shared interests or good times. It's about that deep, unconditional love and trust where you can truly be seen and accepted, flaws and all.
Precisely. And Patterson emphasizes that these core relationships should point you towards God. They should be the people who challenge you to grow spiritually, not pull you away from your faith.
That's a really important point. It's not just about feeling good. It's about having people in your life who help you become the best version of yourself, spiritually and otherwise. Okay, so we've got the core. What's the next layer in this relational blueprint?
Patterson calls it the circle. And this group is a bit larger, around 5 to 10 people. Think of Jesus' 12 disciples. They lived, worked, and traveled together. It was about shared values and experiences, a way of life.
So it's more than just casual acquaintances. It's about actively doing life together, sharing activities that matter to you. I can see how those shared experiences could really solidify those bonds.
Exactly. She highlights the significance of shared activities in this category. It's about creating routines and rituals together, whether that's weekly dinners, volunteering at a soup kitchen, or even just cheering for the same sports team.
It's fascinating how intentionality plays a role here. You're not just hoping for a good group of friends to magically appear. You're actively creating opportunities for connection based on shared values and passions. And speaking of shared missions, doesn't that lead us right into comrades?
You got it. Think of comrades as your allies in pursuit of a common goal. This could be in your career, your ministry, or even a shared hobby. They're your support system, your cheerleaders, and accountability partners, all rolled into one. Jesus had over 70 comrades working alongside him to spread the good news.
That's a lot of comrades. So it's not just about working on a project together. It's about that mutual respect and support that comes from striving towards a shared vision.
Exactly. And Patterson highlights how those shared struggles and triumphs can create a powerful bond between comrades. There's a sense of camaraderie, a knowing that you're not alone in the pursuit of something bigger than yourself.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these pieces fit together. We've got the deep, intimate connections of the core, the shared experiences and values of the circle, and the unified purpose of comrades. But what about those connections that are a little less defined, a little more diffuse? Where do they fit into this blueprint?
That's where community comes in. Think of it as the wider web of relationships, past and present, that have shaped who you are. It could include neighbors, extended family, or people from different phases of your life. These relationships might not be as frequent or intense as your core or circle, but they still contribute to your overall sense of belonging.
It's like having a sense of rootedness, of being connected to a larger network of people who've known you, supported you,
Yeah.
and helped shape your journey.
Exactly. And what's interesting is that Patterson doesn't limit this to just positive relationships. Even those challenging or difficult relationships from your past can be part of your community, shaping your story and informing your growth. It's about recognizing the impact of those relationships, both good and bad, and choosing to integrate those experiences into your understanding of self.
That's a really powerful way to look at it. It's not about pretending that the hard stuff didn't happen. It's about acknowledging those experiences and choosing to find meaning and growth in them. It's like saying, yes, this happened and it shaped me, but it doesn't define me.
Exactly. And I think there's something incredibly freeing about that. It allows us to move forward with a greater sense of compassion, both for ourselves and for those who've hurt us.
I love that. Okay, so we've got core, circle, comrades, and community. That covers a pretty wide spectrum of relationships. But what about those everyday encounters with people we don't know, the folks we pass on the street, or chat with in line at the grocery store? Do those interactions matter in this blueprint for belonging?
Absolutely. Patterson calls this final category crowds, and it encompasses the vast number of people we encounter daily, mostly strangers. She challenges us to see those encounters not just as a mass of faces, but as potential opportunities for connection, kindness, and even ministry.
So it's about being present and engaged, even in those brief interactions, seeing each person as an individual worthy of our attention and respect.
Precisely. And it's about recognizing that even small acts of kindness can ripple out and impact others in ways we might never imagine. It's about shifting our mindset from, I'm just trying to get through my day, to, I have the opportunity to make someone's day a little brighter.
That's a beautiful way to look at it. It's like we're all part of this interconnected web. And even those seemingly insignificant interactions can contribute to a greater sense of shared humanity.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that Patterson suggests that these crowd interactions can be surprisingly impactful, both for us and for those we encounter. Who knows? That brief conversation with the barista could be the highlight of their day, or that smile you offer to a stranger could spark a chain reaction of kindness.
There's so much power in those seemingly small moments, isn't there? It's a reminder that we never know the impact our actions might have on others. So it's always worth choosing kindness and connection.
Absolutely, and I think there's something incredibly hopeful about that. It suggests that we all have the power to make a difference, even in the most ordinary of circumstances. And it reminds us that we're all in this together, interconnected in ways we might never fully comprehend.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've explored the 5 essential relationships that Jesus modeled: core, circle, comrades, community, and crowds. And we've talked about the importance of being present and intentional in those interactions, recognizing that even small acts of kindness can have a ripple effect. But I'm curious about the darker side of relationships. What about those connections that leave us feeling drained, used, or out of alignment with our true selves? How does Patterson address those more challenging relational dynamics?
That's a great question. And it's something Patterson tackles head on with the concept of counterfeit relationships. These are connections that look good on the surface, but ultimately don't provide the genuine connection and support they seem to promise.
Ooh, counterfeit relationships. I'm intrigued. Tell me more. What are some signs that a relationship might be a counterfeit?
One key indicator Patterson points to is a consistent lack of positive fruit in the relationship. Ask yourself, does this connection leave me feeling energized and inspired, or drained and depleted? Does it align with my values and help me grow, or does it pull me away from what's truly important?
That's such a helpful framework. It's not always easy to discern those counterfeit connections, especially if they're disguised as something positive, like a core or circle relationship.
Mm.
But paying attention to how we feel in the relationship, rather than just how it looks from the outside, can be incredibly revealing.
You're exactly right. And sometimes letting go of a counterfeit relationship, even if it's painful, can create the space for healthier, more life-giving connections to flourish. It's like pruning a plant. You have to cut away the dead or diseased branches to allow the healthy ones to thrive.
That's such a great analogy. It makes perfect sense. We can't expect to cultivate a flourishing relational garden if we're clinging to relationships that are no longer serving us. Okay, so we've got these 5 categories of relationships. We've got this warning about counterfeit connections. But here's the million-dollar question. How do we actually build these healthy relationships? It's one thing to understand the categories, but it's another to know how to put them into practice. What does Patterson suggest?
That's where the rubber meets the road, isn't it? And Patterson doesn't disappoint. She provides practical strategies for intentionally cultivating each type of relationship.
Okay, give us the goods. What are some of those practical tips? I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and get to work building my blueprint for belonging.
Well, one of the key principles she emphasizes is the importance of being intentional. It's not enough to just hope that healthy relationships will magically appear in our lives. We need to actively cultivate them.
So it's not about sitting back and waiting for the right people to come along. It's about being proactive in seeking out those connections.
Exactly. And she offers specific steps we can take to be more intentional in our relational lives, starting with the core.
Okay, tell me more about that. How do we go about intentionally strengthening those core connections?
One of the most powerful practices Patterson recommends is explicitly naming your core people and giving them permission to speak into your life at a deeper level.
That sounds a little scary, but also incredibly freeing. It's like saying, hey, I trust you enough to see the real me, the messy parts and all, and I value your perspective enough to let it shape me.
That's exactly it. It's about inviting them into that sacred space of your inner world and giving them permission to challenge you, encourage you, and hold you accountable in ways that other people might not.
Wow, that's deep. It requires a lot of vulnerability, both on our part and on the part of our core people. It's a two-way street, right? We have to be willing to open up, and they have to be willing to step into that space with grace and sensitivity.
Absolutely. And Patterson doesn't shy away from the fact that this kind of vulnerability can feel risky, especially if we've been hurt or betrayed in the past. But she also emphasizes the incredible rewards that come with experiencing this kind of deep soul-level connection. It's about creating a safe haven for each other, a space where you can be fully seen and loved for who you truly are.
That sounds so beautiful. It's like building a sanctuary of authenticity and love, where you can truly be yourselves without fear of judgment or rejection. Okay, so we've talked about how to be intentional in building our core.
Yeah.
What about the circle?
Yeah.
How do we go about intentionally cultivating those relationships that center around shared activities and values?
Patterson suggests starting by identifying the activities and values that are already important to us. What are the things that light us up? What are the causes we care about? What are the ways we like to spend our time? Once we have a clear sense of those things, we can start looking for opportunities to connect with others who share those passions.
That makes so much sense. It's like that saying, birds of a feather flock together.
Yeah.
If we want to build a circle of like-minded people, we need to be hanging out in the places where those birds are flocking.
Exactly. Think about your hobbies, your volunteer work, even the places you frequent in your community. Are there groups or organizations that align with your interests? Are there opportunities to connect with people who share your values?
And sometimes it's not even about joining a formal group. It could be as simple as inviting a coworker who also enjoys hiking to join you on a weekend adventure, or striking up a conversation with someone at your local coffee shop who's reading a book you loved. It's about being open to those serendipitous encounters and being willing to take the initiative to connect.
I love that. It's about recognizing that building a circle takes time. It's not about instant gratification. It's about cultivating those connections over time through shared experiences and conversations.
So, being intentional, showing up authentically, and cultivating those connections over time. What about comrades? Are there specific practices that can help us build stronger relationships with those who share our mission or work?
Patterson highlights the importance of being generous, both with our time and resources. She encourages us to be active supporters of our comrades, to offer encouragement, accountability, and practical help where we can.
So it's about being each other's cheerleaders. But it's more than just surface-level encouragement, right? It's about offering genuine support, providing resources, and being willing to step in when someone needs an extra hand.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're all in this together and that we can achieve more when we're working collaboratively.
Okay, so we've covered core, circle, and comrades. What about community? Those relationships can feel a bit more amorphous, a bit more challenging to intentionally cultivate. What are some practical tips for strengthening those connections?
Patterson emphasizes the importance of simply showing up and doing good. She encourages us to be active participants in our communities, to be present in the places where people are gathering, and to look for opportunities to serve and support others. It doesn't have to be anything grand or elaborate. It could be as simple as volunteering at a local food bank, checking in on an elderly neighbor, or offering a helping hand to someone who's struggling.
It's about shifting our focus from what can I get to what can I give. And it's about recognizing that those seemingly small acts of kindness and service can have a ripple effect, strengthening the fabric of our communities and creating a greater sense of belonging for everyone.
It's about remembering that we're all part of something bigger than ourselves, and that we have a responsibility to contribute to the well-being of those around us.
That's such a powerful reminder. It's easy to get caught up in our own little worlds. But when we step outside of ourselves and focus on serving others, we not only make a difference in their lives, but we also enrich our own lives in unexpected ways.
Okay, so we've talked about core, circle, comrades, and community.
Right.
What about crowds? Those interactions with strangers can feel so fleeting, so inconsequential. Does Patterson offer any guidance on how to be intentional in those spaces?
She does. One of the key practices she highlights is the importance of being present and engaging. Even in those brief encounters, it's about putting down our phones, making eye contact, and being willing to strike up a conversation with someone we don't know. It's about choosing to see the personhood in everyone we encounter, rather than just treating them as obstacles in our path. That can feel so awkward, especially in our increasingly digital world. We're so used to hiding behind our screens, interacting with people through a filter. But Patterson is saying, hey, let's put those screens down and actually engage with the people around us.
Exactly. And it's not about trying to turn every stranger into a best friend. It's about being open to those unexpected connections, to seeing the divine spark in every person we encounter, and to recognizing that even a brief interaction can have a positive impact.
It's about being a little light in someone's day, a reminder that they're seen and valued, even in the midst of a busy crowd. It's about recognizing that every person has a story, and that sometimes the most unexpected encounters can lead to the most meaningful connections.
It's about remembering that we're all connected, even in those seemingly fleeting interactions, and that those connections, however brief, can contribute to a greater sense of belonging and shared humanity. We all crave that feeling of being seen and understood, and sometimes a simple smile or a kind word can make all the difference.
I love that. It's like we're all part of this grand tapestry, and even the smallest threads play a vital role in creating the overall beauty and complexity of the design. And speaking of design, let's talk about the designer himself. One thing that really stood out to me in the book is how Patterson emphasizes the importance of our relationship with God as the foundation for all our other relationships. It's like she's saying that we can't truly experience genuine belonging in our human connections if we're not first rooted in our connection with the divine. What are your thoughts on that?
That's such a crucial point. And it's something that Patterson weaves throughout the entire book. She argues that when we're grounded in our relationship with God, we're better equipped to love and connect with others in healthy ways. It's like having a secure base,
Yeah.
a source of unconditional love and acceptance that frees us to show up in our relationships with greater authenticity and vulnerability.
That makes so much sense. When we feel secure in our relationship with God, we're less likely to seek validation or fulfillment from our human relationships in unhealthy ways. We can approach those relationships from a place of wholeness and security, allowing us to give and receive love more freely and authentically.
Exactly. It's like our relationship with God is the wellspring from which all our other relationships flow. When that wellspring is full, our relationships are nourished and flourish. But when it's dry, our relationships wither and struggle to thrive.
So it's not just about adding more people to our lives. It's about ensuring that our relationship with God is the foundation, the anchor. That keeps us steady through the inevitable ups and downs of human connection.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that true belonging isn't something we earn or achieve. It's a gift that's freely offered to us through our relationship with Christ. And when we receive that gift, it changes everything. It changes how we see ourselves, how we relate to others, and how we move through the world. It's like we're finally free to be who we were created to be.
What a beautiful thought. So how do we practically cultivate this center of Christ in our lives? What does that look like day to day?
Patterson offers a lot of practical wisdom, but I think it boils down to this. Make time and space to connect with God, whether that's through prayer, reading scripture, spending time in nature, or simply sitting in silence and listening to his voice. Those moments of connection nourish our souls, and fill that wellspring of love.
It's like we're recharging our spiritual batteries
Mm.
so we can go out and engage in our relationships with energy, compassion, and a deeper sense of purpose.
Exactly. And as we cultivate that intimacy with God, our understanding of belonging expands beyond just our immediate circle. We start to see the interconnectedness of all things, recognizing that we're all part of God's family, connected in ways we may never fully understand.
That's a profound shift in perspective. It's like we're moving from a scarcity mindset, where we're constantly striving for connection and approval, to an abundance mindset, where we recognize that we're already fully loved and connected, simply by virtue of being God's children.
And that realization frees us to approach our relationships with a sense of generosity and openness, offering love and acceptance without expecting anything in return.
We're not trying to fill a void within ourselves. We're simply sharing the love that's already overflowing within us.
Exactly. And I think that's the essence of Patterson's message. That when we're connected to the source of all love, we can't help but be agents of love and belonging in the world.
That's such a powerful message, and I think it's a perfect note to end on. But before we go, I'd love to hear from you, our listeners. What resonated with you most from this deep dive into Blueprint for Belonging? Share your favorite takeaway in the comments. And don't forget to share this episode with a friend who could use a little blueprint for belonging in their own life.
We all need reminders of how powerful and essential connection is. And Alli Patterson's book offers a beautiful roadmap for building a more connected and fulfilling life, rooted in the unshakable love of God.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Blueprint for Belonging. We'll see you next time for another exploration of insightful and inspiring ideas.
Welcome back, everyone. Before we went to break, we were exploring how to intentionally cultivate those 5 essential relationships that Alli Patterson outlines in her book. We talked about being proactive and really digging deep with your core people, that small group who you can truly be yourself with.
Right. Giving those core people permission to speak into your life and call you out when you need it, that's a game changer. But it does take a lot of trust. But what about those relationships that center around shared activities and values, the circle? What practical steps can we take to build that layer of connection?
One of the things Patterson suggests is to start by really reflecting on what makes you tick. What are the things you're passionate about? What are the causes you care about? What are the activities that bring you joy? Once you have a clear understanding of your own passions and values, you can start looking for opportunities to connect with others who share those same interests.
It sounds like it's about being intentional about who you spend your time with, making sure those connections are aligned with what truly matters to you. But wouldn't focusing on shared activities make it harder to connect with people who are different from us? How does Patterson address that?
That's a great question. And Patterson acknowledges that there's a tension there. We want to build a circle of like-minded people, but we also don't want to isolate ourselves in an echo chamber. Her suggestion is to be open to diversity within those shared interests. For example, if you're passionate about social justice, you might join a book club that focuses on social issues. But within that book club, there's likely to be a wide range of perspectives and experiences, even though everyone shares that common passion.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's about finding that sweet spot, that intersection of shared interests and diverse perspectives, which I imagine can lead to some really enriching conversations and friendships.
Exactly. And Patterson reminds us that building a circle takes time. It's about cultivating those connections over time through shared experiences and meaningful conversations. It's about being patient and allowing those relationships to unfold organically.
That reminds me of something she said about how building circles is often a byproduct of pursuing a shared mission or passion. You don't set out to find your circle, you find them while you're busy building something else.
Exactly. And that's where our comrades come in. Remember, those are the folks united by a shared mission. It could be a work project, a volunteer effort, or even a creative endeavor. And Patterson suggests that one of the most effective ways to strengthen those comrade relationships is to be generous.
Generous with our time, our resources, our encouragement.
Exactly. It's about being willing to go the extra mile for each other, to offer support and celebrate each other's successes. It's about showing up for each other, not just when it's convenient, but when it really matters.
I love that. It's about fostering that sense of we're all in this together, creating a culture of mutual support and encouragement within that shared mission. So we've talked about core, circle, and comrades. What about community? I think a lot of people struggle with how to be intentional in building that layer of connection. What are some practical tips for strengthening those bonds?
Well, Patterson encourages us to shift our focus from what can I get to what can I give. She suggests finding ways to be actively involved in our communities, to be present in the places where people are gathering, and to look for opportunities to serve and support others.
So it's about finding those small, everyday ways to make a difference in the lives of those around us.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be anything grand or heroic. It could be as simple as volunteering at a local food bank, checking in on an elderly neighbor, or offering a helping hand to someone who's struggling.
And by focusing on what we can give, we're not only strengthening the fabric of our community, but we're also creating a sense of belonging for ourselves.
Precisely. And I think that's a key point that Patterson emphasizes throughout the book. Belonging is not just about receiving, it's about contributing. It's about being an active participant in the tapestry of human connection.
So even those seemingly small acts of service and kindness can have a ripple effect, creating a more interconnected and compassionate community for everyone.
Exactly. And I think it's important to remember that building community takes time and effort. It's about showing up consistently, being present, and being willing to put in the work.
So it's not just about attending the occasional community event or writing a check to your favorite charity. It's about making a commitment to be an active and engaged member of your community, day in and day out.
Exactly. It's about making those small, everyday choices that contribute to a greater sense of connection and belonging.
Okay, so we've talked about core, circle, comrades, and community. What about crowds? Those brief interactions with strangers can feel so fleeting and inconsequential. But Patterson seemed to suggest that they actually play an important role in our overall sense of belonging. How so?
What's fascinating about this concept is that Patterson challenges us to see those seemingly insignificant interactions as opportunities to practice presence, kindness, and connection. It's about putting down our phones, making eye contact, and being willing to engage with those around us, even if it's just for a moment.
So it's about choosing to see the humanity in everyone we encounter, recognizing that even a brief interaction can have a positive impact on both ourselves and the other person.
Exactly. It's about shifting our mindset from these people are just obstacles in my path to these are fellow human beings who are just as worthy of kindness and respect as anyone else. And you never know. That brief encounter could be the highlight of someone's day, or it could even spark a chain reaction of kindness that ripples out into the world.
I love that. It's a reminder that we all have the power to make a difference, even in the most ordinary of circumstances. And it brings to mind something we talked about earlier, the importance of being rooted in our relationship with God.
Yeah. Yes. And Patterson emphasizes that point when it comes to crowd interactions, too. She suggests that when we're grounded in our connection with God, we're better equipped to see the divine spark in every person we encounter, even those we don't know. It's like we're looking at the world through God's eyes, seeing each individual as a precious and beloved creation.
That's so beautiful. It's like those crowd interactions become many opportunities to practice love and compassion, to be a reflection of God's love in the world.
Exactly. And I think it's a reminder that even those seemingly insignificant interactions can be sacred encounters, opportunities to connect with the divine in unexpected ways.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, exploring the 5 categories of relationships and discussing how to be intentional in building those connections. But Patterson doesn't shy away from the fact that relationships can be messy and complicated. In fact, she dedicates a whole chapter in navigating those tricky family dynamics.
She does. And I think that's one of the most helpful aspects of the book. Because, let's be real, those family relationships don't always fit neatly into those 5 categories. Sometimes they're a blend of several categories. And sometimes they fall somewhere outside the lines altogether.
Right. Like what about that aunt who's always been more like mentor than a family member? Or that childhood friend who feels more like a sibling than a buddy? How do we make sense of those relationships within this framework?
Patterson acknowledges that there's no one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to family. She encourages us to be discerning about which family relationships are life-giving and which ones might need some boundaries.
So it's about recognizing that we have the agency to choose how we engage with our family members,
Right.
even if it means setting some boundaries to protect our own well-being.
Exactly. And she emphasizes that setting boundaries doesn't mean we love our family any less. It simply means we're prioritizing our own emotional and spiritual health. And sometimes that means creating some distance or setting limits on how much we allow certain family members to influence our lives.
That's such an important point. It's easy to feel obligated to maintain relationships with family members, even when those relationships are unhealthy or draining. But Patterson reminds us that we have the right and even the responsibility to protect ourselves, and to prioritize the relationships that bring us joy and support us in our growth.
Exactly. And she offers some practical tips for navigating those tricky family dynamics, including communicating our needs clearly, setting healthy boundaries, and seeking support from other trusted relationships.
That's so helpful. It's a reminder that we're not alone in these challenges
Yeah.
and that there are resources and strategies available to help us navigate those complexities with grace and wisdom. And speaking of challenges, what about those times when our relationships, whether with family, friends, or even our core people, just feel plain hard? What does Patterson suggest for those seasons of relational struggle?
Well, one of the key themes that runs throughout the entire book is the importance of grace. Grace for ourselves when we make mistakes, grace for others when they let us down, and grace from God, who is always there to meet us in our brokenness and to guide us towards wholeness.
That's such a beautiful reminder. It's so easy to be caught up in the shoulds and shouldn'ts of relationships, to feel like we're constantly failing or falling short. But Patterson encourages us to embrace imperfection, both in ourselves and in those we love.
Exactly. And she reminds us that even the healthiest relationships will have their ups and downs. There will be times of conflict, misunderstanding, and hurt. But those challenges don't have to be the end of the story.
Right. It's about choosing to see those challenges as opportunities for growth and deeper connection. It's about learning to communicate our needs more effectively, to practice forgiveness, and to extend grace, both to ourselves and to those we love.
And Patterson reminds us that we don't have to do it alone. We have a God who is always with us, who understands our struggles, and who offers us his unending love and support.
I love that. It's a reminder that even when our human relationships feel messy or complicated, we can always find solace and strength in our relationship with God.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the most powerful messages of the book, that true belonging isn't something we have to earn or achieve. It's a gift that's freely offered to us through our relationship with Christ.
That's so beautiful, and I think that's a perfect place to pause for now. We've covered a lot of ground in this segment, exploring how to build healthy relationships, navigating family dynamics, and finding grace in the midst of relational challenges. But there's still so much more to discover in Alli Patterson's Blueprint for Belonging. So stay tuned, folks, because in our final segment, we'll delve into the transformative power of the center of Christ, exploring how our relationship with God can be the foundation for all our other relationships and the source of true and lasting belonging. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been unpacking so much wisdom from Alli Patterson's book, Blueprint for Belonging. We've explored those 5 essential relationship categories: core, circle, comrades, community, and even crowds, and talked about practical ways to nurture each of them. But before we wrap things up, I want to circle back to something we've touched on throughout this episode, something Patterson calls the center of Christ.
What's fascinating is that Patterson doesn't present these relational categories as a formula for happiness or some kind of checklist to complete. She's very clear that true lasting fulfillment in our relationships flows from our connection with God. It's like she's saying, before you can truly belong anywhere else, you need to belong to Christ.
That resonates deeply with me. It's like trying to build a house without a foundation. You might get it to stand for a while, but eventually it's going to crumble.
Exactly. Patterson argues that our relationship with God is that unshakable foundation. She uses this imagery of living water to describe the kind of life-giving, soul-sustaining connection we can experience with Christ.
I love that imagery. It speaks to that deep inner thirst we all have for love, acceptance, and belonging. It's like having a wellspring of love and acceptance that's always available to us, no matter what storms we're facing in our external lives.
Precisely. And when we're drawing from that wellspring, we're less likely to put unrealistic expectations on our human relationships. We can approach those connections from a place of wholeness and security, giving and receiving love more freely and authentically.
So it's not about achieving some kind of relational perfection or checking all the boxes on our blueprint. It's about being rooted in our relationship with God, allowing His love to transform us from the inside out, and letting that love overflow into our connections with others. We bring our whole selves to those relationships, flaws and all, because we know we're already fully loved and accepted.
It's a powerful reminder that true belonging isn't something we earn or achieve through our efforts. It's a gift freely given to us through Christ. And when we receive that gift, it changes how we see ourselves, how we relate to others, and how we move through the world. It's like we're finally free to be who we were created to be.
What a beautiful thought. So how do we practically cultivate this center of Christ in our lives? What does that look like day to day?
Patterson offers a lot of practical wisdom, but I think it boils down to this. Make time and space to connect with God. Whether that's through prayer, reading scripture, spending time in nature, or simply sitting in silence and listening to his voice. Those moments of connection nourish our souls and fill that wellspring of love.
It's like we're recharging our spiritual batteries so we can go out and engage in our relationships with energy, compassion, and a deeper sense of purpose.
Exactly. And as we cultivate that intimacy with God, our understanding of belonging expands beyond just our immediate circle. We start to see the interconnectedness of all things, recognizing that we're all part of God's family, connected in ways we may never fully understand.
That's a profound shift in perspective. It's like we're moving from a scarcity mindset where we're constantly striving for connection and approval to an abundance mindset where we recognize that we're already fully loved and connected simply by virtue of being God's children.
And that realization frees us to approach our relationships with a sense of generosity and openness, offering love and acceptance without expecting anything in return.
We're not trying to fill a void within ourselves. We're simply sharing the love that's already overflowing within us.
Exactly. And I think that's the essence of Patterson's message, that when we're connected to the source of all love, we can't help but be agents of love and belonging in the world.
That's such a powerful message, and I think it's a perfect note to end on. But before we go, I'd love to hear from you, our listeners. What resonated with you most from this deep dive into Blueprint for Belonging? Share your favorite takeaway in the comments, and don't forget to share this episode with a friend who could use a little blueprint for belonging in their own life.
We all need reminders of how powerful and essential connection is, and Alli Patterson's book offers a beautiful roadmap for building a more connected and fulfilling life, rooted in the unshakable love of God.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Blueprint for Belonging. We'll see you next time for another exploration of insightful and inspiring ideas.